Yeah, that is weird. I mean, do you think it was the government or do you think it was the aliens that did it, you know?
That's a good guess, Mac.
Well,
yeah.
the implant phenomenon is interesting because a lot of the times when they extract these things, it's nothing that points the arrow at exotic technology. It's like some weird, maybe it has some anomalous properties, but it's nothing that we couldn't manufacture if we really wanted to. So it almost makes me wonder if the implant phenomenon, much like some of the UFO phenomenon itself, is essentially maybe a diversion of some kind to make us think that something's happening. There's an element of theater that you find in UFO cases, in occupant cases, that intrigues me a great deal. Even the fact that UFOs have such bright flashing lights in so many reports, it's almost like these craft want to be seen, or they make themselves seen to just a few people at a time, or whatever. And elements of the implant mystery kind of lend themselves to a similar interpretation. It makes me wonder if that object had been removed, if we'd find anything that would really resolve the UFO implant controversy. I would be tempted to say it wouldn't. It would just be another weird little thing. But yeah, the implant phenomenon is fascinating because I do think that objects are being removed, whether they're technologically sophisticated objects or essentially little placeholders, little mischievous Post-it notes or something. I don't know.
Let's go to Ontario, Canada on the international line, Mac. We've got Greg there. Greg, go ahead.
Good morning. During the last segment, both of you gentlemen made comments about humans being a technological species and also about people not being able to recognize different kinds of aircraft. For example, you mentioned the Harrier jump jet. I would submit that we're actually not a technological species because even though we use a lot of it, most people don't understand it.
That's very true. Robert Heinlein had a famous line that we are, specialization is for insects. Humans need to branch out and be able to do a little bit of everything. And we have a very small minority of our population that's actually adept at technology. The rest of it just kind of blindly use it, and it might as well be magic for all we know. I know that's certainly the case with parts of my computer and my cell phone. I understand the idea behind it. Carl Sagan made a nice analogy. If we took a TV back to Victorian England, gave it to the top engineers of the time, and said, build this for us, they might be able to understand some of the mechanisms involved. They'd understand, for example, that the beings on the screen, assuming there was a TV signal, weren't real people. There was an image, but they wouldn't even be able to begin to build a TV in Victorian England. So we're presented with possibly much the same thing today with the UFO phenomenon, and certainly so few of us are so schooled in the workings of technology. It's almost as if a symbiosis has been reached. Technology is almost kind of an organism in its own right, and that's actually one of the things that makes me think that we will begin to merge on an organic level in the next 100 years. In fact, I would submit that we will ultimately have to in order to survive.
Let's go to Panama City, Florida. Alex, east of the Rockies. There you are. Go ahead, Alex.
Hey, I wanted to ask, I just wanted to let you know that that previous caller that had been talking about, he was having the night paralysis and whatever. I went through that a lot when I was younger, and it finally stopped when I was about 22. But the question that I had was, you were talking about structures on the moon, and I know I don't really trust a whole lot that I see on YouTube, but I came across a video where it was supposedly Neil Armstrong, one of the Apollo, astronauts, and they were walking around on the surface of the moon, and he's talking to ground control. And he says, hey, do you guys see these structures? And it looks like, an apartment complex or something like that, abandoned, but, that kind of a structure. And ground control's like, yes, we know about it, go to the left. And he keeps moving towards it and, saying, no, do you guys see this? And they keep telling him, yes, we know about it, go the other way. And I was also wondering if you knew that there was any truth to him saying Neil Armstrong saying, that they had come across some entities on the moon and had pretty much been told, hey, leave and don't come back. And that's also kind of why Buzz Aldrin is like, we don't need to go back to the moon. We already know all about it. Let's go to Mars.
Well, Buzz Aldrin, in a recent interview, made reference to a fairly enigmatic structure on the surface of Phobos. It's basically the steeple-like protrusion on an otherwise very flat, rounded moon. And to the best of my knowledge, this strange feature was identified by Efrain Palermo. His website's palermoproject.com. He's an independent Mars researcher. And I found that interesting that Aldrin would specifically mention this particular feature. And when I say structure, I don't mean that it was necessarily built by anybody, but it is odd, and it definitely looks like a candidate anomaly. It's certainly classified as such. As for the videos of Armstrong, I've read reports like that in sources that are not very credible. I've never seen any. I'd have to see the original broadcast or listen to the original broadcast to make any sort of judgment on that. I've got to say I'm extraordinarily skeptical of the whole aliens on the moon thing. There's a certain seductive logic to it, I suppose, but I've never seen anything that would make me think that there's any factual basis to it.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Let's take, I don't know, maybe we can squeeze one more in for you. John, time for a quick question. Go ahead.
Yes, it's John in California. Earlier he'd mentioned that you were thinking the Greys were robots.
Yes.
My question is why couldn't they be genetic robots? Kind of like the H.G. Wells cross-contamination protection.
Absolutely.
And there's been instances where they've been kind of warm towards humans, kind of had human characteristics, where they've kind of learned using our DNA to be more compassionate.
Well, it's kind of like where do you draw the line between replicants, or excuse me, where do you draw the line between human and robot? On a certain level, a living organism is a very complex machine. I think the replicant word. I think I dropped the replicant. The word replicant.
Well, they can definitely be part biological and part machine indeed. Mac.